Welcome to Happy Wife, Happy Life.
We're your hosts. I'm Kendahl Landreth.
And I'm Jordan Myrick.
And we are two incredibly unqualified,
but deeply in love comedians who are here to help you with all things relationships.
And on today's episode, Jordan, what are we talking about and who are we talking about it with?
We're talking to Nwadiwe and Emily Louise about sex parties. How are you two?
I'm good.
Real good.
Yeah, how you feeling?
We're here
I'm
to
great.
talk about our favorite thing.
Yeah.
Sex parties.
Yeah.
Your
Yes.
favorite thing. I love it.
That. We normally do a weekly kind of catch up. Have you been to any sex parties this week?
Oh man. No, we're interviewing for a new one.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Okay, I already have 800 questions.
Yeah. And we'll
Didn't
answer
know there
all
was
of
an
them.
interview process,
Oh, yeah.
and I love that. It's
intense one.
prestigious.
They all have interview processes.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't just like show up.
What's the most maybe intense question or like the hardest criteria? Like, is there anything where you're like, ooh, I hope we get in, but this one aspect of the interview, like...
No, I feel like it's always when they're like, send a pic. You're like, oh, are we going to be hot enough? Are we
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like in the acting world where you have to have like a really good headshot, or is it kind of like just a selfie where they're like, oh, that's what you look like, got it?
I think it's for safety. I think it's so like they know
100%.
who you are, and then when they check your ID, it's like lines up. But I think it could also be some weird thing where they're like, hey, what do you look like?
Yeah.
Sure. One thing and then we'll get, because I'm already like, I just want to talk about this, but I have to hear about your week. But what I will say, and I have more questions about later, is that when I went to a sex party, the thing that surprised me the most was how...
Oh, Kendahl had to get this out right up top that Kendall's been to one sex party.
And I was pretty cool. But I was surprised at how organized it was.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
felt like a dentist's office almost, where everything was so organized and intense, and people
And clean.
almost in clean, the cleanest place I've ever been, and no one was really like, there was no jokes. People were really serious. They were like, no, we need this information, which was nice.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to like the barriers for safety, it's all business. The jokes and fun happen when the fun's happening.
Yeah.
But
They need to know you understand what consent is
yeah,
fully.
yeah,
Yes.
fully, that you're not, a creep. I think
Yeah.
that is the like main focus in general. It's just safety.
Now, we ran into someone in the lobby who I will not name, but we did run into someone in the lobby, and you said you met them on the cruise. Was that a sex cruise?
No,
I
that was
wish.
their-
I would love to go on one of those cruises.
Yeah,
but it is not.
Yeah, we just saw like the big Instagram video for one of them, and we were like, "Ooh, would we want to see what that's talking about?"
I feel like a sex cruise to me, my hesitance would be, what type of people are going to be on this cruise? Because I think sometimes I would worry that there'd be people who are like, we're here to have fun and we're here to have sex and this is going to be great. And then there would be a sector of people that are like, maybe they've been married for a really long time and they're kind of like, we need some, kind of like a sandals resort where they're
like, we're
we
gonna
need
spice things up.
something to help our marriage. So we've gone on this sex cruise and it feels like it would be a little upsetting.
I feel like usually you can tell
Yeah.
who's who.
But also, what I was
Sure.
going to say is, I feel like every like corner of alternative romance has that, right? Where it's like relationships, E&M, polyamory, sex parties, threesomes. You always have the element of the couple that's trying to find the thing that's going to keep it together. I feel like any cruise that is like a shared interest is going to be at least a little bit horny, right? Because I think the way we try and...
Yeah, we went on an Alaskan cruise, and it did feel
hot.
how interested we all were in glaciers. I'm not joking. It connected us all in a way.
It's like I keep pitching to go to this LARP camp. I keep telling Jordan, like, I found out about these LARP camps.
Hold on.
I want to go. And Jordan's
This
like, that's too sexy.
Whole aside,
You can come
I'm
with
going
us.
I'm going to a LARP in July. If you want to join, I'm building a character. We're gonna start. If Jordan, if you're not trying to go, we'll add you.
We can be. I want to be like the wenches in the corner.
Yeah, but
Like
we will
selling
talk.
illegal
I am.
alcohol.
This is
Please.
real. I'm going
Please.
to a LARP. I literally just. I'm going to fighter practice on Saturday.
I would let you go with Iffy. Because I trust Iffy because we're friends. I'm worried that Kendall's going to go and I can't go. It's not for me. I'm like,
told
I
you to
can't
come,
go.
so that's not on
no,
me.
but I'm worried you're going to go and then I'm worried that like a bunch of people are going to fall in love with you and then it's going to be like a whole thing. But I'm like, you can go with Iffy.
Yeah.
Iffy's a friend and I trust Iffy.
Everyone's gonna be so sweaty.
It's so funny.
derogatory.
Sweaty?
Yeah, they fight. They're like you like run
Yeah,
around
you're
and
really
stuff.
swinging those foam stuff. We're gonna talk for real. We're
Thank
gonna.
you.
But it is funny that you say that because that kind of of brings it back, because there was one friend that we had that was interested in like sex parties, and we were like, oh, we can, take you with us. And they were like, okay, I'll ask my partner. And we just never heard. And I was like, yeah, I can't imagine going like, hey, I'm trying to go to a sex party with Iffy and Emily. Don't worry, bro. They're just going to show me some
just
stuff.
a tour.
No
It's
one's
just
in
going
danger.
Yeah. Two people online being like, hey, we're trying to fuck hot people together.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm going to pass on those two taking you to the sex party. But it's actually very fun. And even bringing it back to the cruise, because it's just another shared interest thing, right? It's just people who are like real excited and like having sex and exploring it. And
they want to build community. Like, it's a lot of people, like, even that don't want to play with other people there
Yeah.
are like, hey, we're here to make friends that are also into the same thing as us.
Like, truly, like, it is a thing where, like, we all can go. And that doesn't mean there's any expectation for you. Well, you've been to one before.
I'm the pro.
I was like, how long is it going to take to get into this episode for Kendahl to bring this up?
I know, that was like the one cool thing I did in my early 20s that I'm always like, well, look, I have experience in that department, okay?
I count that as experience.
Yeah. But I am curious to see how you'd feel of some of the ones we go to, because we have a friend in our D&D group who like bartends at like their own like sex parties.
I was literally gonna say that is the third crossover. It's comedy, sex parties, and then D&D.
Yeah.
They're all together.
Our D&D table is wild. I was like, if we're gonna invite someone that's very regular and they're gonna be like, I gotta leave.
Yeah, I know. It is not like everyone are like freaky kinksters at our D&D table, and I was like, oh, I pray for the vanilla person who comes here and just has to listen to us like talk or like, be like, oh, you wanna head to Torture Garden together? It's like, yeah. I remember when we were going to Torture Garden and we were sending fits in the D&D chat. We were like,
don't say Torture Garden like it's a thing we all know.
None of us. Yeah, don't act like it's Wendy's.
You're
None of us
talking
know
about
what
it like that's
Torture
a
Garden is.
What if we're like, it is Wendy's? You just go there to get food.
I say, damn, I've been there.
Yeah. No, Torture Garden is an event. It started in London, right? With the Faustian Society.
Yes.
And it's basically these like kink BDSM parties. So it's not so much as a play party. It's more so just like for you to wear these like great, like, outlandish, like kink fits, listen to a lot of industrial. I will say,
There's
if you get
shows.
into BDSM, you're going to be listening to a lot of industrial music. I fuck with industrial. Like I actually really do like industrial a lot. So it is.
What is that? Like
It's like
metal?
No, it's like a like techno. How would you describe industrial? It's like just kind of like bare bones techno.
I
feel
was honest,
we
like
have
the
to
techno noises, but goth.
We cannot be in the Spotify
Is that correct?
offices and
Techno
not-
noises, but goth sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's lots of like shows you go watch. So people do like performances and stuff, and everyone sees it. And
this
there's
is giving Renaissance Festival.
It's giving Bridgerton.
I would say it's the Renaissance Festival late night.
Incredible.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
it's
because
a good
a lot of
point
them
of
will have themes too. Like there's some that had like a Matrix theme. We went to a cowboy themed one, which was great because we got to both simultaneously shop for our outfits for the sex party, but also for the Renaissance tour that's coming up. Like we're like, oh, this will be great.
I love when you guys share your outfits.
Oh yeah,
I
Thank
love your outfits for the parties.
yeah,
People don't clock that they're weird until all of a sudden it's like, is she wearing a tail?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love them. I
It's
think
always
it's so
hidden.
fun.
Yeah.
So how did this begin? Like, how did you two meet, and how did the conversation come about of should we go to sex parties?
This is very fun. Because I would say, and then I'll let Em take it. Em is more the vet, and I've always been curious. Like I've dated back, like I went and showed you those old Facebook messages. Like I've always been interested in it. Like I think as far back as like when I graduated high school, I had a friend who was like in the lifestyle. It seemed interesting to me, but I think I just wasn't ready. It just seems so taboo.
Yes. Can I ask, when you say interested in it, like what specifically were you interested in or drawn to?
I think going to like, dungeons and more BDSM side than the sex party side of it. But like the idea of like going to a dungeon and like seeing impact play. And I didn't know what angle I wanted to approach it from yet, because I think because I've just always been kind of like a big human, the idea of, you know, putting pain on someone for pleasure, it just always seemed like, I don't know, I don't want to bust a Lenny, you know, like that is from Of Mice and Men, for those who are trying to follow along.
Yeah. We do a lot of kind of literary references on this podcast. So that is perfect.
I've never read a book. So sorry.
But yeah, I think it really, really ramped up my curiosity for it when I started watching like kink.com videos. And really
that's a real website, kink.com?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow,
And it's all like kink forward porn. And I found it specifically, not even like in search of kink specifically.
Yeah.
I found it because like I saw this, I want to say it was like 2020, one of their specials. You know,
I was like in 2020, but I realized what you're
yeah. It was like a 2020 special. And yeah, this had to be like the late aughts, before 2010.
Oh, this was a 2020 episode of
TV
news?
Yes.
Not
Okay.
the year. To be
2020,
clear,
like, got it. Okay.
Yeah. 2020, the news
Show?
investigative
We're all on the
show.
same page now.
But you know, they would
We were all
do some
on
of
the
the
same page
sit
the
down
whole time.
talks, but then sometimes they would do like the more documentary
Like
style.
exposés.
Yeah, and so they had one on ethical porn, and that's when I kind of learned that like in a lot of these like male dominated porn like mega corporations, they were run by men.
Yeah.
Women weren't paid well, men were paid even less, and it just was not good for the performers. And as a lifelong nerd, I'm nerdy about everything. So I'm nerdy about, you know, trading card games, tabletop, and I'm also nerdy about my porn. And so like I was always very interested in like what actually goes down, because I think from a standpoint of like one of the oldest professions, sex work, you know, just seeing how it evolved, devolved, and how it's like criminalized, it's always been an interesting thing for me. And I think it's just with any of my interests. Like I remember like one of my 7th grade papers were on how video games were like
I thought you were going to say
being, like,
about porn and how, you know.
not yet. Close. I was thinking about it, but not
Yeah.
yet. But just how video games were used to be demonized for like the violence instead of like banning actual weapons and the things that go.
Right.
So like this argument that people have been having with video games and violence, I was having this in 7th grade.
Because were you a video game player?
Oh yeah, I was deep into it. So I was just very interested. And I think also if I really had to like look inside, it probably just is just my blackness. You know, almost everything that had to do with blackness growing up in Compton, California is like criminalized. So you almost have to want to question, why is this criminalized? Why is so video games, eventually porn and sex work in general, kind of looking into that. But yeah, once I found out about ethical porn, I started kind of looking into supporting that. So I would, so I found like kink.com, and kink.com was really good because they had the beginning of the videos where they talk about, you know, hard limits and
Oh yeah, they
safe
do
words.
interviews with them
They
and
do
talk about it.
Yeah, it really kind of teaches you. Like honestly, if anyone's like listening to this and was like, I have been interested and I don't know where to start, I think watching their videos and seeing how they have these clear-cut conversations about consent really teaches
And what
you.
they want to happen in the scene.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm hoping that this thing will happen, or like this,
That's
and this is
so
what we're
cool.
into. So
Yeah.
you can tell it's like genuine, like they're all actually into
Yeah.
it, and it's not like just acting.
I
then
love that.
Yeah.
Because it's such so many people, I don't want to say everyone, but I would say most
Yeah.
people watch porn. But I think it's almost like this, no one wants to talk about it. So it's hard to, even if you are ethical in other places in your life, it's like, well, where do I watch porn? I just on my private browser, I search the first thing that comes up and then I just watch it because I don't want anyone to know. I'm not like with my clothes where I'm like, I am going to seek out because it feels so shameful.
Oh yeah,
which is so unfortunate.
and all that does is give power to like all the negative aspects,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's so shameful, you know. Like there's people who are like, oh, you pay for OnlyFans? It's like, yes, you are paying the people for
Right.
that.
You
thing.
pay for service.
Yeah, you're paying people to do all that
you-
work.
You spend so much time. You tip a barista and you don't even like the coffee, but you're like, well, you put the labor in to make this, so I want to give you this money. You don't think the same thing should happen to the person taking a 12-inch dragon tentacle up their, you know, vagina?
Right, if my barista did that, I'd be like,
I'd say much bigger tip.
much
Yeah,
bigger
yeah,
tip. I
yeah.
would need to, I mean, but you would feel like this is way more than what this person did.
Yeah. But yeah, so once I kind of started seeing that and kind of like inherently kind of learning how, like, you know, enthusiastic consent, kink, safe words, kind of like building scenes kind of worked, I got more interested because I remember before that with one of my partners way back when, they were like, oh, I'd be interested in going to a dungeon. And I contacted that friend and we just never got around to doing it. And then I found like one dungeon, well, it wasn't a dungeon, it was like an after hours that was like kink adjacent, and it was more because there's a lot of like performance BDSM too, where like you can watch people like do impact play, and usually like that's real fun because like there's
lots of shibari.
lots of shibari.
So just shibari is the ropes,
Yes.
right? It's like rope tying
Yes.
with people.
And impact play is like spanking.
Yeah,
Great.
spanking,
Or like and like
paddles.
paddles and stuff.
Yeah,
And it's all spanking, or there's other hitting.
like as
For
like,
who?
yeah, can you ask,
I don't know.
like what is the
I'm
question
asking.
you're asking?
What, is impact play just like something to the butt?
Not necessarily to the
Okay.
butt. That would be the most common thing because
Yeah.
people like to be put over someone's lap.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
think the most common is the butt, but there, some people like to be slapped on the back and like different parts of the body.
Which some of them I'm like, no, thank you. Do not hit me in the
yeah,
face.
yeah.
Well, I guess maybe that's what I'm.
yeah.
Are people doing face hitting and stuff like that?
Yes, not with paddles. Usually it's like an open hand, like cups.
Got it.
Yeah, and you've been way more parts of me, but I feel like usually that's more in the like kind of more kinkier sex than like
Then just like, oh, we're doing this so everyone can watch.
yeah,
It's
but
not performative.
Yeah.
Got it.
but
Okay.
I'm sure
It all exists,
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
But I got into this kind of stuff because I've been ethically non-monogamous for like 15 years. And I sort of think that kind of comes with the territory. Like, oh, I want to explore. And like, this is a way for me to explore what I'm looking for with people who understand what I'm doing. I don't necessarily have to just keep explaining over and over again. Like, I'm not cheating. I swear this is allowed.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, these people just understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Right,
So you
totally.
found it to be like a more welcoming community that kinda
Yeah.
knew what was up.
Especially 15 years ago. I feel like now it's even more a little bit, people are like, oh yeah, it's more common. But
Yeah.
I'm sure 15 years ago that was not
Yeah, it was
common.
like, it was just me and all my friends were like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you decide to get into this?
Someone I was dating, we would go out to like all these things, and I was like, oh, these like feel again like kink adjacent. Like everyone's wearing all black. There's a lot of leather going on. And then I met somebody I used to be best friends with who was a professional dominatrix. And so she worked in a dungeon, and she was like, oh, if you want to start going to these parties, like this is how you can do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm in.
Wow. So you were a dominatrix?
No, my best friend was a dominatrix.
Okay. So she wasn't like, you can also be a dominatrix, and then,
No,
Okay. Got
I
it.
could not be a dominatrix.
Okay. But so she was like, you can come with me.
Yeah, she was like, I know these people that we can go to this party and like everything will be fine.
Do you feel like you fall into like one group of like kink, one group of like there's I guess like a dominatrix or dungeons or like all this? Do you feel like there's one group you really align with, or are you kind of like open to doing a lot of different things?
Yeah, like, is it more like we do all types of stuff within this spectrum, or is it like we more so fit into like a category of this?
I understand. So I would call Iffy a pleasure dom. I am like a service sub or a princess.
Okay.
But I would say within sex parties in general, we like to try a lot of different things. So like, oh yeah, we just go around and watch stuff, see what we like, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's try that.
yeah.
Is a princess like a pillow princess in the lesbian community?
No.
Got it.
It's more work than that, unfortunately.
The princess does
Which is
work?
true. Princesses in real life do a lot of work.
But it is very like, I am a service sub. I like when I'm told what to do. I like that, like, nope, these are the rules. This is what you're allowed to do. But also, I don't want someone to be like degrading. So like, I want you to be nice to me and tell me I'm pretty and I look cute, but also I'll do whatever you ask me to.
I see. So in a way, it's like a literal princess, where it's like you're fancy, but there are rules you have to follow.
Yes.
We're watching Bridgerton right now, so I kind of get.
Yeah.
We
I
kinda
would
I
say-
kind of get that
yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah. It's basically Bridgerton. Right?
With way less clothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And so like that's where like the I think the stars align because I did that. I went to that kind of like kink adjacent thing. I went a few times, and I remember I was real hyped because I brought someone because I was like, oh, do you wanna get spanked? And then we go and I was like, oh, I can't spank you here. Sorry to get you excited for spanking.
Sure.
This is not that type of vibe, but it was still like a cool spot.
So you might go to some places and they might be like, spanking's not a thing here.
Usually they'll tell you pretty up front. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, like when, like, because those are like just events. Because I was like, I feel like that's like Torture Garden. You go and it's more like a community thing. So like there are people playing, but there's only certain space you can do it in. Whereas
it.
like other things you can go and it's like, great, here's the rules. Here's what you can do in this room, in this room, in this room. After this time, go nuts.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and when I don't know when we exactly started talking. Well,
When did you meet also? How did you meet? When did you meet?
We met on Instagram.
We met, yeah.
love that.
So yeah, it was. I know the full rundown is that her brother is a Game Changer fan, and then was like, like you should watch the show. It's very fun. And then she saw me and was like, he's.
I'm gonna go
hot.
find that man.
And then she followed me, and I was like, oh, this hot person's following me. I'm gonna follow you back. But
Yeah.
like,
And we
it
do
wasn't-
have a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah, we have like it
Right.
wasn't just like just because you're hot.
Yeah.
I
That's kind of how we
followed you.
met.
Yeah,
we
very
were like, oh,
similar.
you're
Yeah,
cute.
yeah.
We have all these mutual
Yeah,
friends.
it's like
Let's
Yeah,
live,
live.
exactly.
you both lived in the same area. It's like
Because
not
that's like
wild.
the natural like vouch, right? Where you go to someone's page, you're like, oh, they're hot. Oh, they know all these people. Okay, cool.
Yes.
And then we
Yeah, you're
like,
at least safe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And but like at the time I was just in a relationship, so it was just like I'm just gonna follow this person to just look at them be hot. And then then like me and my ex broke up.
Which I did not know.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I was in this is why she says it. You'll see why she says it in a second. So then I'm in I'm in my like slut tour as I go through a breakup in Europe, and I get a DM from M.
No. No.
Okay, go.
You literally posted a thing that was like, hey, I'm in London. Do you have food recommendations? And I was like, yes.
Yeah, that was an open thing to everyone. Anyone could do it. Some may ignore it if they are not interested. But instead, I got a food rec, and I was like, okay. And I think I might have been texting you when I was like drunk because I was smoking a cigarette. If you ever see me somewhere smoking a cigarette, just put me in a Uber. Just
say, "Hey,
pull out
buddy."
my phone. Yeah, hey buddy.
okay?
Yeah. Approach me like a lost cub,
Yeah.
and just like put me in an Uber. I need to go home. But yeah, I was doing that, and I get like, we were texting. I think I texted you back or no?
Yeah, but I think not until like a couple days later, maybe.
Yeah. And then like didn't end up going to that restaurant. Came back home and she posted.
He was just taking all the bait you were handing him perfectly.
I know.
I know. And then she posted like a champagne in this like cute wine glass, like champagne flute, and I was like, oh, I would like to drink champagne out of that glass someday. And I don't. And like, now that I'm realizing how direct of a flirt that was, but I think I was just trying to find a creative way to say that's a cool glass.
So you weren't flirting.
I mean,
He
I
absolutely was
Yeah,
You were just
Okay.
looking for glassware.
yeah. I was just thank you understand me. I was just looking for glassware.
You thought you were on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. I was.
We're going to actually order those.
Yeah. And then we just planned a date, and then it was we went on one date
For 3 days.
and yeah, we ended up hanging 3 days in a row.
love that.
Fun.
Yeah.
And now we have tattoos of those champagne glasses.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
that's
Hold hands and they
cute.
clink.
That is
Yeah.
so
That
I
is
guess- I guess-
really cute.
That's what it
Oh
is, yeah.
my
We'll post it to our
God.
Instagram.
Oh yeah.
That is precious.
But yeah,
Oh.
her like one of her last relationships was like a lifestyle dom sub relationship.
Yeah, in a way that I learned a lot about, like, oh, there are certain parts of this that I like and certain parts that I definitely do not.
Yeah.
Can I ask what parts you don't like?
Yes. So like when you do lifestyle stuff, it is like very much like it's not just like the way we do it is like, oh, we're gonna go do a thing or like at a party and this is like what the dynamic is. It's not like that all the time.
Sure.
But like, and also like if we're at our house, like we would just talk about what we want to do. But a lifestyle one is like, oh no, it's like that kind of all the time, which is sometimes fun. But then it's like, a lot of times subs you'll get punished for stuff, and I used to have to stand in a corner naked if I like did something he didn't like, which was consensual.
Right, it wasn't like, it's
Yeah,
totally
like I agreed to it, but then I was like, oh, I don't actually think this is fun for me.
Yeah.
It feels kind of stressful.
That's very intense. I will say you two seem extremely normal to be around. which
Thank
I think
you.
sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I've been around people with like a really strong, whatever, like dom sub dynamic where like when I'm hanging out with them, I'm like, and I'm also here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's
Yeah.
remember that we are seeing Shrek 3 or whatever. Like
Yeah.
we're not at a sex thing right now.
Well, I think you have like the stereotypes, which I don't know how you two feel about this. I'd be interested to know. Like, especially in New York, living in New York, you're on the subway and a person kind of walks on the subway with someone on a leash, and you feel a little like this feels like I'm now involved in this thing. What are the thoughts? Which I found interesting because I feel like consent is so big in the sex.
Oh yeah,
community.
you wouldn't imagine how big of a constant point of contention that is.
Okay.
Yes.
If you go on FetLife, not right now,
I
a site that has-
wouldn't recommend it in general.
it's a site that has not been updated since I first found it back.
It
in
looks like a GeoCities
2006.
website.
You know, I'm a supporter. I paid the little premium support thing.
tapping.
I would like my. Oh yeah, I know.
He's playing
Sorry.
piano over here.
Look, I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to be tapping on the desk like that. Yeah, I'm supporting. I like the idea of the space,
Yeah.
but I would like to know that my support dollars are going towards maybe like sprucing it up, giving it like
An
a
HTML update.
yeah. But yeah, it's basically like a kink social media site. I just realized I just said that. But like there are kind of like these written posts that people do, and I'd say like because I log in maybe monthly just to see what's going on, and because like no one respectfully like around our age really uses it. Like there's a few, and those are the freaks. Shout out to y'all. But I feel like the most part is like more older folks
Yeah.
in the kink community because it was such a
Because it was like
staple.
the first like social media for like kink stuff.
there probably also wasn't that much social media in general.
Oh, look, we'll get into because I've been reading a collection of essays by Midori, which is really good. I'll let you borrow it when I'm done. But
Great.
she's
you'll like it.
Yeah,
Okay,
she's a
cool.
dominatrix and kind of talks about the lifestyle. But it's
Is
so
she famous?
within the community
Got
for
it,
sure.
okay.
Like I knew who she was even before.
It's
getting
like one of
involved.
the best-selling like kink books.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's
okay.
pretty like old, so it
Yeah.
is like some of it you're like, oh, is this
Well,
a
that's what I
thing
was.
now?
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh,
is
sorry.
one of the things that she's always mentioning is how subversive the lifestyle is, how the leather and how weird it would be to be wearing them. It's like, well, chokers are kind of like I'm not chokers, but like collars. People wear it for like fashion reasons.
Yeah,
now.
so many kids in high school wore them, and they're all from Hot Topic. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, as an adult now, I'm like,
Ew.
ooh.
Yeah. But it's more accepted, and I think that is why like sex is so weird. I think in especially Western society because it feels like there's like progressive motion, but there's still like just that tinge of just like prudishness within it. Like you like kind of like maybe adopting more of the kink fashion. We see a lot of people wearing harnesses, with
And, like,
dress
latex.
clothes and latex, but you still have people like raise their eyebrow at the idea of sex work.
I feel like it's like the women who take pole classes, and they're like, I would never go to a strip club.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Or like their bachelorette party, they go to a pole
Yes.
dancing class.
I'm like,
yes.
oh, what? You only like it when you do it poorly? You don't
Yeah.
like it when people do it professionally
Yeah.
and they do it well?
You like it when everyone's dressed?
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I mean, if you just think about like so many of the like societal contracts that we have around sex that like are completely normal, but if you like add money to it, it's like weird.
My favorite tweet for so long was, well, I don't know why you care why I'm having sex for money. You're having sex for good morning texts and lies.
Yeah. But it's all like, very personal moral things, and there's just so much we just also have to unlearn. There's and I think it seeps into every aspect, right? Where it really comes down to like the moment we see femmes, thems, and women's kind of like take the power dynamic out of like sex, and then they have more control is when you kind of see that backlash, right? Because there is this like dated idea that is like, oh, if I am an affluent male, I should be able to have my pick of any woman because they want the like stability and the success that is attached to me. It's and I mean that even comes down to why like men can't date women in high powered jobs, because that takes away from that. And now you are now at this level playing field. And I think that just people in general aren't taught to date from an equitable place. There needs to be a power dynamic so they can feel like they have a bargaining tool
Yeah.
instead of just liking the person.
I will say those are the men who like are like, I'm gonna get into being a dom, and then they're so bad at it because the dom is in charge, but the sub sets the rules.
Yeah.
So you're not you're in charge because I told you what the boundaries are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like when you cut a sandwich in half and then make me pick which side of the sandwich I want.
Oh yeah.
Oh, real?
Yeah.
You have
an
siblings?
age-old- I do. It's an
Yeah.
age-old
A lot of
trick
them.
from my mother. A
Yeah.
genius. I always am like, what a genius thing.
One of you
us
can
cuts
cut,
it,
one of you
and
can
one of us
pick it.
picks. So we cut the most even slice. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's great, but I think everything should be like that.
I
That's a
agree.
good
Oh,
example. Yeah. Okay, we got a lot of questions about this, which is
Ooh,
very
okay.
exciting.
Oh yeah. Also, I do think it's fine to be weirded out by the people with the
Oh, I was
leash.
gonna ask you. What do you
but
think?
I think
Yeah, are
it's
we being
very fine to
rude?
just ignore them.
Sure.
Oh yeah. No, I wasn't yelling at them on the subway.
I didn't think you were.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just wondered what people thought about it. I don't even specifically have a thought.
Yeah.
When I would see, I wasn't like uncomfortable. I didn't really care. I always just was like, oh, interesting. I wonder if that's because in every community there are people that people are like, they're not doing it right though.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
didn't know if it was a thing that people
Oh,
were like,
yeah.
I think also voyeurism and being seen is like a big thing. So like it could be like a humiliation thing. Like you've been bad. I'm gonna take you out on your leash because now everyone has to see you like
But
this.
that feels like I'm part of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't-
listen.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't like that. I don't
Yeah.
want to look at you and your ugly husband.
Yeah.
Like, get away from me. I don't want to see y'all normally, much less him on a leash.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because like so I have an eternity collar which I'm not wearing right now,
but
but
he
it,
said I have an attorney.
I have an
was like,
attorney.
Okay.
And I will
so
be
you know
suing
I have
you.
an eternity.
Yeah.
No, I have an eternity collar which is a gold collar. It's
Okay.
just a circle. It looks like jewelry. And I wore it when I was on Game Changer with Iffy, and the amount of people that clocked it were really interesting. And I don't really know, like, in general, I don't think it matters, but I don't wear it around Iffy's daughter.
Yeah.
Because
I was-
you explain what that is for people who don't know?
Yeah, so you get collared by someone, and it's different for everybody. Generally, it's if you're in a relationship with a dom and sub, like, Iffy gave me that collar, so it belongs to me, and it, like, makes me property of Iffy.
Got it.
And the eternity one, it locks with a screw, so I can't take it off unless he takes it off of me.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Can the fire department?
I mean, there's a tool you can use, but
Okay. Yeah.
also the tool is just always accessible. It's
Right.
just like,
Yeah.
like you know, there's
I guess there's
still
emergency.
safety on my mind. And I'm like, no, you gotta be able to take that off at any time. You know, and it is very funny because it is all just like in the idea of like, oh, you know, we're seeing this, but I think there's just so many versions of that I think it's to me, I think of it like the feet thing, right? If we never knew dudes were jerking off to feet, we'd have no problem posting feet online. We'd have no. It's the idea that we know it, that we're like, oh no, but it's innocuous otherwise.
Yeah, because I'm like, just pretend they're like those little kids. Like, oh, my husband's gonna run, so I gotta keep him on this leash.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
but
yeah.
so I think it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, oh, it's kind of weird because you know it's a sex thing, but if it was just like, if you had no idea it was a kink thing and it was just someone having their like friend or partner on the leash, you'd be like, that's weird, and you'd move on, you know.
Yes.
But I think knowing it is this thing is what kind of, I think, triggers that conversation of like, well, I'm a part of it, and it's like, it's because you know.
But I'm like, then they should have to give everyone on the train money. That's how I feel about it. I'm
That's
like,
the thing.
if
We're
I'm
trying to get money.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
money.
Trying
I'm a
to get
grifter
some money.
ultimately, is
Yeah,
what's going
yeah.
on. But I'm just like, if everyone on the train is involved in this sex thing now, you need to Venmo me $20.
Yeah, I want my $20.
I don't know. I'll be part of it for
Yeah.
free. I'm getting nothing out of this.
Yeah.
I'm
fair enough.
absolutely
See,
nothing out of
that's
this.
It's not that you're involved; it's that you're not involved enough. That's
Well,
why
yeah.
you're-
Well, I just feel resentful. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
unfair that I'm being put into this thing. I'm not being asked, and I'm not being compensated in any kind of way. If they came on the subway and the guy on the leash gave everyone a Hershey's bar, I'd be like, tight.
Yeah.
Get on the subway
See,
more
this
often.
makes me feel more sexual. I feel
Yeah,
like you're
yeah.
making the
That's
situation
fine because
feel
I'm
more
part of it now.
sexual.
I'm getting
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
If they're like, it's kind of like when parents get onto an airplane with a baby and they'll hand the people around them like a little bag that's
Yeah.
like, this is our first flight. Thank you for being patient. Here's earplugs and a pack of gum and whatever. Where it's like, you don't need to do that, obviously, but I would be much more receptive if someone was doing a sex thing on the train and they brought me a tiny bag that was like,
They hand you
yeah.
a Klonopin.
yeah. They were like, we love
I-
sex stuff, and here's a little bag for you.
Wow, I feel the complete opposite. I feel like when I was on a subway and someone came on the subway with a leash, I wouldn't really like think about it. But if they came up to me and were like, "Can I give you a chocolate bar?" I would be like, "Nope, get away from me.
Okay.
Get away from me."
All right. Okay.
I imagine this is what these questions are going to be about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you want to ever ask questions on our podcast, we might answer them on the podcast. You can go to our Instagram. You can join our Patreon. You can email us at the email in our link tree. We will hopefully answer your question on the podcast.
All right. So our first question is, what is the main goal of going? Like a specific sex mission or a feeling?
A mission. I like that.
Oh,
That's actually a really good question.
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I really like to go, one, because it's like a really good place to like see new things that you haven't necessarily done. And you're like, oh, that looks like fun. Like maybe we could try implementing some of those things. They also have a lot of equipment that people just don't necessarily have, like a lot of machines and all these like stuff to play with, which is also very fun. But I like it for foreplay. Like, oh yeah, all this stuff is so sexy and hot, and then we get to go home and do whatever we want.
Yeah, there are a lot of couples who don't do anything at the party because you're not expected to do anything. It's not
you
a
can
thing
go
where
there
it's
and
like
just-
if you're coming
you
in
can
here,
be on the
you
subway.
better be
Yeah.
you better be fucking. No, you have a lot of people just like kind of go and like they're there with their partner, they get riled up, they go home, and then they do what they want in their own private space.
Yeah.
So it really ranges where some people are going because they're like we want to get riled up. Some people are going to like maybe find a third. Some people are going because they want to like have group sex in a room with a bunch of people and not even necessarily interact with them, but just the act of being in that kind of pile. You have people who maybe might be going to like meet people within the community because it is a community.
Yeah.
I think the way I described it to friends is like it's like going to a like chill party that's like kind of like a like you remember those parties you would go to where you're like, oh, I really don't know anyone here, but like that goal is to meet new people.
Yeah.
It's like going to a party like that's really fun and you can fuck there.
Right.
And I think that there are like truly some friends who I'm like, oh, I think you should go here to like help with your own kind of like personal stuff. Cause I think that like sex is one of the hardest things to talk about, I think, in our society because it is so taboo. And I think that so many people have hangups or like, just surrounding around sex that it like affects their romantic relationships or how they approach them. And I think kind of going into a space where you see people just kind of being confident in themselves.
And everyone is nice.
Yeah, everyone's so
So you
sweet.
feel very welcomed.
Yeah. And I think kind of being in a space like that kind of can really help a lot of people kind of get through some stuff and like,
Yeah, because no one is judging you there.
yes.
Well, I want to know, kind of off this question and related to that, what would be a reason not to go? Is there like a certain mindset or intention that you're like, maybe this isn't the place for you?
Well, I think coming from the aspect of like a man, you can only go as a couple.
Yeah, you
or-
can't go as a single man.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you go as a single woman?
Yes.
Okay.
Single woman or non-binary. As a man, you must go as a couple. So from that aspect, if you are a man who is interested in it, but your partner isn't, and because I think that's one of the things, like we were saying with like the alternative relationship lifestyle stuff, is that a lot of times it is a male partner who wants to try it because they think it's exciting, and their partner kind of isn't into it and they're trying to just kind of drag them to it. And I think that that's just not going to be good because there's going to be a lot of hot naked people there, and if your partner already doesn't want to be there, usually that has a lot of
Like
lot to do- jealousy, them feeling secure in the relationship. So watching you kind of like staring at all these like other
People that you can
women-
see literally having sex in front of you.
Yeah.
might not be the best thing to add in the relationship. So I think go only if you know it is like there's a saying in this space, almost like 99% of sex parties is enthusiastic consent, which means if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
can't
like-
be like, okay, I guess. It's like,
Yeah,
nope,
yeah.
that's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
And you
don't-
have to treat it as such.
If you're not hearing someone be like, yeah, yes, then you're no go. And I think that is how you should approach bringing someone else there. If they're not stoked to go, I think don't even rock the boat. There's nothing wrong. I think we are all married to the idea that in monogamous relationships, you will only find your partner attractive and you will only, that's all you do. And, you know, some guys, they say they do. And I'm not going to fight them on that. That's just like, I'm just going to take your word for it. Finding other people attractive doesn't mean you all of a sudden have fallen out of love. It does not mean that your partner is not the most beautiful person to you. That doesn't mean it's just having eyes. You know, it's just having eyes. So I'm polyamorous, and in my younger 20s, I would just, you know, be dating someone, and the moment I started crushing on someone new, I'd be like, oh, then this relationship I'm in must be done because I have a crush on someone, and then I would just sabotage a relationship just to go to the next one. When in reality, it's like, no, that's just my brain.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to have sex with that other person and then come back home.
Yeah, it's just like, it really just changes the wire, but that is all just because of how we're wired, you know. And even, you know, with this, there are going to be, you know, if this is clipped and put on Instagram, or if there's always people who's like, no, you just haven't, there's no way, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, that is your base foundation of your beliefs around romance, and trying to Jenga pull a piece away from that, from some dude on the internet, you know.
And it is going to be a dude.
It's going to be hard.
It's really interesting too, because it is like, you know, we're monogamous, and it's funny how so many, like, we're not religious, and we're not like we don't live a very traditional life or believe in traditions, but it's funny how many things in life, when you really go back to it, you're like, well, I guess that is like a Christian social way of living, or a really which isn't even, maybe it works for us, but it's like it is just interesting, where it's like, I wonder if we all just started from a square one, no Christianity involved, what would our relationships look like?
It would be whatever.
I think it would be communal. Like everyone, like I think, like, you know, it takes a village or whatever. I think it would be like that. Like, oh, we have these kids. Like, everyone raises them. Everyone does that.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Okay, how do I find them? I'm not cool and don't get invited to any.
Well, you'll never get invited to them unless you're like someone that's specifically in the kink community that they're looking for, having like, oh, we'd like you to come to our party. However, you can just do a quick Google search of your city and play party. And
party, that's the term that people should be looking for.
Play party. Because play party is one where you can have sex specifically at. But there are lots of things, and like, you'll be able to tell when you open the websites, like, what it is.
Is there a beginner level you would recommend?
Yeah, give me some Googles that you would type in if you're looking to get into this.
As a person who's new, maybe they're like, I don't really know what I want to do, but this seems interesting and fun to me.
And this is gonna go against everything we just said. I would say, like, creating a FetLife, because FetLife.
Yes, I agree with that.
It's by cities, and they like.
The events will have pages.
Yeah, the events will have pages. Okay. They're a lot of times, like, people will do write-ups. I know, like, there was one that I saw where someone did all the write-ups of all the dungeons in LA, and like the kind of, like, people on FetLife love to treat it like a Yelp for parties and dungeons,
which is good.
Which is good. And also, the reason why that's the best way to go is you don't want to kind of just like use Google and go to anything. You kind of want it to be vetted. Yeah. And going at it alone kind of makes that harder. So kind of like going on a site like FetLife, where you can kind of see the people who are going there. You can kind of see what some of these people are posting, so you can kind of see the vibe of the people going there. Then that's how I would do it.
Also, like, kink adjacent things, like a lot of like goth nights and stuff that you like, depending on what they're looking for specifically. But if you're like, oh, BDSM and kink, like, go to goth nights and start making friends, and then be like, hey, like, do you have other kinds of like parties that are like a little bit more spicy than this? They will give you the information.
Totally. Yeah. That's a good tip.
Because they're looking for community, so they are happy to invite you into the community.
That's nice. You don't even have to start right at a sex party or a dungeon or anything. You can like go to
it could just be music or whatever.
Yeah, or roller skating night at a I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Kendall and I are gonna go to the roller skating night and be like, is there anything spicier than this?
Yeah.
No, like, the guy's like, what
are you hockey?
Yeah, hockey is the BDSM of ice art. Okay, great. Are STDs a concern for people who attend?
I mean, like, definitely, yeah. I think just in any type of sex, that is a concern. But what I will say is, a lot of parties will require you to test 3 months into, and you should be getting tested regularly, whether you're going to sex parties or not. I'm talking to my fellow fuck boys out there. I don't fellow. I'm not in the club. But
We're trying to create community with them.
Yeah.
No, please do not.
But yeah,
You
you definitely want to like parties are going to like parties will usually have their own systems in place, but you should be protecting yourself. They usually have, protection there.
And usually if you play with someone that you do not know, they will require you to wear condoms and stuff.
They being the other person, or they being the sex party?
Both.
I mean, like,
both
yeah,
or either.
even some without like the hard rules are like, hey, we recommend if you are not, go, on that board, if you are trying to have unprotected sex, just know the risk that you're taking. XYZ. Be on top of it.
Yeah, because we do have to sign waivers and stuff. That's like,
Yeah, but I think on top of that, if you do go into it and you meet someone, you hit it off, and you just want to be safer, you don't have to have sex there. You can connect. A lot of people connect at parties and have sex later, just to be safe too.
Mm-hmm. I think that's nice. That's something that I would not have ever thought about. I'd kind of be like, if we're meeting here, it's happening here.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll be able to like one of the ones that we go to, they give you colored lights, and one of them is like, the one color is, we are only here to play with each other and watch. If you talk to people, like, it could be a different thing, but they're not like actively looking for people to approach you. And the other color is, we are looking for other play partners. And it's like a really good way to tell like who's actually looking for what without being embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
nice.
And
That's
not have
sweet.
people coming up to you all night if you're not interested.
Yeah. And I will, give this disclaimer to any dudes who are just like, oh, this seems like a great way to it's like, I don't know how to emphasize enough that like sex is an activity that is greater when you are friends, when there is chemistry, when there is romance. So you're still going to have to like, be a good person and talk and have a good conversation with them. Do not try and like come to these events thinking that you're going to be like,
You can just shove it in.
Yeah. I'm like, if women don't want to have sex with you in general, they're probably not going to want to have sex with you at
Correct.
a party.
Yeah. And a lot of people are there not to have sex at all because their thing isn't the sex that's fulfilling, it's the act of the kink that's fulfilling.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense. How does the sex, if the sex is happening at the party, how is it something that starts? This person says, is it like, okay, go? How do the party start?
Oh,
Yeah, there's an
How do
announcer
you
who
start?
goes,
Yeah.
and
There's
they
an
shoot
air
off a gun.
Oh, you mean the party in general?
I think the party, and also probably when you meet someone you want to have sex with, or people you want to have sex with.
When you get to the party, there's an icebreaker game.
Okay.
Not like a Trust Falls thing, but it's like the last one we were at, they gave everyone a card, and if you find 4 people with your same suit, you can go and get like a little prize thing. And you don't have to play, but it really lets people talk to other people before it's like, hey, so what are you into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's so funny. It's so organized. That's like truly the one thing I remember from when I went is that it was like a dungeon-esque thing. And I walk in and I was like so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be really cool. And this person was like, okay, so there's a snack table over here. And I go over and it's like goldfish. Like, looked like I was on a blood drive. It was like goldfish, Chips Ahoy crackers. There was a thing of mouthwash. There was a thing. And everything was so organized. And everyone was like sitting in it was just so.
Yeah, it's usually like a quiet room where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, are you like overstimulated? You can go in here and like relax and have a
and
snack.
then also aftercare too.
Yeah.
What is aftercare for people who don't know?
Oh, I'll let you.
Oh,
take
you want
that
me
one.
to-
Yeah.
So after you finish a scene, so like after you're done, not even necessarily having sex, but like if we're doing like impact play or whatever, and I will go into a thing, which is a thing for a lot of people, is called subspace, where basically I feel drunk without being drunk. Like my brain is just like, goodbye. I'm in autopilot. I'm very relaxed. And it's like, he knows when it's happening. And so like to come down from that like high, you have specific things that you'll want to do together, but generally it's like, oh, it's better to be in like a quiet space where you can like be calm and like kind of come back to earth.
Got it. Okay, great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next question.
Sorry, you have all the questions.
I know,
I keep
sorry.
just turning to you.
Oh yeah, but also people will let you know when they want to have sex with you at the
Yeah.
sex
Just
party.
be like,
yeah, that
hey,
was- sorry.
yeah,
Good
is it
question.
just like, hello, I'd love to have sex with the two of you?
Kind of. It can be like that, but also it's like, oh, if we're watching like someone that's doing shibari and like we're talking to this person that's also doing, they're like, hey, are you looking for this or that? Because this is what I'm looking for. It's like very straightforward.
And when you say this or that, just to be clear, because I know so many people in our questions were kind of like, I'm scared, so I want to really break it down to like real terms. Will people just come up to you and be like, I'm interested in
having sex with you,
or I'm interested in spanking or knife play or whatever the thing is? Like, will they just
knife
say
play
it?
is not allowed. Blood play is not allowed because that's dangerous and they
Sure.
do not want to be held accountable.
So that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's like something you do at home.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, those
Okay,
are
sorry,
gonna be
just
more
threw
the,
knife
like-
play out there.
No.
Or-
But that's what I was like, oh yeah, if you're into that, you can't do that at sex.
Yeah.
That's good to know, though.
Well, the
Yeah.
one I went to, because I think that's where you brought it up, because the one I went to, I remember before I went, the girl was like, what are like, I was like 19. She was like, what are the things, are there anything you wouldn't do? And I'm like 19. I'm thinking of like hair pulling. That's all. I'm like, I'm kinky. I didn't do nothing. I was like, no, I'm down for whatever. And we got there, and the first person I saw, they were in a cage and they were cutting each other with knives. And I literally turned, I was like, not that, but I didn't even know that was an option. And through the whole night we're walking through, I was like, also write this down, not that, not that. And pretty much it was like everything.
Thinking of the fact that you were 19, I feel like it was one of those more underground parties too. Because
kind of like rave-ish.
Yeah, well, because there are some there are some like organized but still pretty underground parties, and then there are like parties that are like well established, known, like where it's like we were going to this, but like many people I knew of this, and then there are like some of the more like fancy exclusive ones where it's super like it all is like it's so interesting how it's segmented, because there are some parties that are just like hyper expensive, but those are like
where there's fancy people there.
Yeah, fancy people.
Fancy people.
Like famous people, or like people who do like professional porn and stuff, where it's like, oh, this costs so much money because we need to know that you are not going to like put anyone on blast.
Yes, I have a question about that, because you do OnlyFans.
Yes.
And so I have always wondered that if there are people who are like celebrities who are like, oh, I want to do this thing, but that
Like with you,
does
you're all
feel...
over Dropout. It's
Right,
like, are
that-
people
Yeah, yeah,
weird?
well,
That can
that's-
feel intimidating to like go, and obviously there's rules for parties, but just sometimes people are not respectful of rules. Like, you ever have a fear of like someone's gonna film me, someone's gonna post on Reddit?
You are not allowed to have your phones out at all. You get one warning, and then you are never
kicked
allowed
out.
to come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're very strict on privacy, and yeah, there is still like someone did come up to me and like, "Were you on Game Changer?" And I was like, "Yeah,"
They're
but
like, great, I had to ask, and just left because they know like you can't be weird.
Right.
Yeah, but it's, and at the end of the day, it's like like this is the circle of trust. So I'm not, even if you're like, hey, I did, definitely don't open with it. But if you like, but that's why I was saying there's that shift that I know is eventually going to happen, where it's going to have to be more of like the close circle, self-organized joints than like a very public one, or the super fancy one that is.
So it's getting bigger. It's on the rise, you would say? Like sex parties in general, or is it feel like it's becoming more popular?
I think in the United States, I would say it's more popular. In Europe, it's definitely been a thing
it's
for a long time.
It's always been a thing, and I think they're starting to get more popular. I think it's a slow moving needle, but we are getting more comfortable with sex, and I think especially our generation, we're finding that we don't have to adhere to as many traditions and allow ourselves to try new things. I think that's why, we've seen, ethical non-monogamy and polyamory blow up the way it has. It's always been around. It's been long standing, but just even when you look at it, I even like thinking about the fact that Hinge has a, setting for it now. Where before it was this thing you kind of had to like try and let people know right away, where it's kind of shorthand. And I think it will kind of happen. I think, it's so funny because I feel like it's like out of all the stuff that, we do, that one is the one that I think is the least like people are like, clutching their pearls about, because I think there's always been like the idea of them like Eyes Wide Shut, or like, I remember I used to watch a lot of Queer as Folk, and they would have like an element of that on there. Like, I think it's just always been in the zeitgeist. And I think that, when people realize that it is like, it's all a bunch of adults who are being like, there's a process. It isn't just like you just show up and whatever happens, happens.
Right. Yeah, I will say, even if you are nervous, once you get there and sort of get like relaxed, it is very fun.
Yeah. And yeah, just another time to reiterate, there's nothing ever expected of you. Like, there's on your first time, they'll have you sit through like a consent and like rules kind of workshop. And like, they've said like, there's been people who've come like 6 times before ever playing. And
So they're just the workshop.
Just 6 times to the parties.
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah.
Because there's nothing expected of you. You can just go and chill for the vibes.
Yeah, if you wanted to go and bring a bottle of wine and just drink it, you could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just like, just another, community of just people who live alternative.
Amazing.
I love that. All right. Are they serving food at the parties? Which is not my question, but I also want to know.
Mostly no.
Okay.
Sometimes when you go to ones that are like professional parties, but they do them in different spaces, they will have like an open bar and food, but like snacks. But the ones that we go to are like BYOB, and then you bring it and drop it off with the bartender. They put your name on it, and then they'll mix you drinks with it all night or
that's
whatever.
fun. They should do that at weddings.
Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
If someone invited me to a wedding and they're like, you have to bring your own alcohol, I'll be like, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just like, instead of having no alcohol, I'm like, be like,
that's
bring
true.
a bottle and then I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Also, it's really good because if you do want to go, but you are afraid to talk to people, and then you start talking to people, if you bring like bubbles and something, offering someone a glass of champagne is very classy, and I would absolutely recommend it.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
I love that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, if they were going to serve one food at a sex party, what would you be like, hell yeah?
Something with protein in it.
You said
What's
protein shakes.
Yeah, a little protein
No.
shake. I know.
Or something like on sticks, like something that you're not going to get super dirty eating.
You
Yeah.
feel like a rotisserie chicken on a stick, kind of a
You
A
mean like a
whole
chicken
rotisserie chicken.
skewer?
like a chicken
Like
skewer,
chicken
not a rotisserie,
satay.
not a full rotisserie chicken.
A
that's
full
different
Ren
vibe.
Fair
Yeah,
taco.
yeah,
Ren
yeah.
I do feel like Ren Fair and escape rooms are two that feel close. Once escape rooms also feel like they have a Venn diagram.
Escape
Except
rooms are a
everyone's yelling
gateway.
at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think escape rooms are a gateway drug to sex parties. I would say.
Yeah.
If you're really into escape rooms, I think sex parties could be for you.
I just
Mix
need to
up.
study it. I'm like the Venn diagram of like a couple of these activities that feel so separate that I'm like, there is something. The same people are doing them.
Well, it's Margaret Cho that has that joke about the Ren Fair is just BDSM in the daylight.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a clip from the Ren Fair the other day, and I said, "This is
I
Was
saw a
it the-
clip of
was
you
it-
two at the Ren
Yeah, yeah.
Fair, and I was
Oh,
like,
I love that woman.
Yeah.
I know. I saw her. It was a woman
is
who
the one
worked
that
at.
feeds you."
She was pouring.
Pours the beer.
She told me to put her hole in my mouth, and I was like, yes. And she was so taken aback that we did not blink at her. She was like, oh, this usually freaks people out, but now you're sort of freaking me out.
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
Wow, you really
Gremlin
bested
boys.
her.
Yeah, we just made direct eye contact with the whole time.
That's
Well,
very
I'm
funny.
I'm so obsessed with this because sorry to bring up Bridgerton. Jordan's gonna
Okay.
kill me. I can't stop bringing up Bridgerton. It's all I've been watching. But what is so fascinating about it to me is like remembering. Obviously, I knew this, but really remembering how insane conversations around sex were back then. Where it's like these women would get married and they would not know. They're 22 years old. They would not know what sex was. And then their husband, who usually was not a man they liked, it was
Yeah.
just like a man that was like 80 years older than them, would be like, I'm going to put my dick inside you. It's like that.
And you're like, what is that?
Thought of that. And yeah, they don't even know what that is. And it's like, it is so wild. And all the men know about, like, at least on Bridgerton, which is the only reference. I haven't read a history book about this, but on Bridgerton, it's like even the teenage boys know all about sex and they know it. And they have, they're hiring sex workers and they're doing all this. But these women are about to become like mothers and they do not know what sex it is, so
Or
how
what's about to
babies are
happen to
made,
them.
or what's about to happen to them, or what like it is. I mean, and there's a lot of like on Bridgerton they talk about women who will be like, why am I not getting pregnant? And then they realize, then the people kind of inquire more, and it's like they're not having sex, they don't know what sex is. It's like so wild. And so to think that we've gone from that to like even where we are now, it's like there's still, of course, ingrained so deep in us so much of that culture.
Oh, yeah.
Even if that feels so insane, it's like, of course, it's still in us a little bit, the shame around. I mean, we're coming from such an insane place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's pretty much time to wrap up, but I do want to know if you each have like a closing thought or thing that you think is really important that we haven't gotten to, that you're like, I think people should know this, or a fun fact, anything like that. I'd love to hear it.
You got one off the top?
Yeah. I think, whether or not you're going to a sex party, I think that if you're having sex, you should be having good sex. I don't think you should be settling for sex because you think that, they check enough boxes or this and that. I think you should be working with your partners to talk openly about sex, talk openly about your fantasies and your desires, and not being afraid to do that, because I find that once you kind of have that like openness, that freedom, and you can have that kind of communication, it allows you to be more assertive in your regular life. It allows, because we have so much, ingrained psychological kind of like hang-ups around asking for the things we want in bed, that if you get comfortable doing it there, everything else just seems so much easier.
Yeah, totally.
My thing, I think, is like, if you do want to go to a sex party and you are like so nervous, but it's a thing you are really interested in, just know that there are other people there that are just as nervous, and they will be so excited that you are there to talk to them.
And that
That's
you are
so
nervous.
true.
Right?
Yes.
They'll be like, thank God.
And then
Yeah.
you will make friends with those people,
Yes.
and then the next time you can all go together, and then it doesn't feel so scary.
I love that. That's like big first day of school energy.
Yes.
You just remember that it's everyone else's first day of school as well.
Yes.
And that's so nice.
Even as someone who's gone a bunch, I feel like sometimes I'm like, ooh, I get that little, like, the first day of school, like, ugh. And then as soon as we get there, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I like this, and this is very fun, and I don't feel any anxiety anymore.
And there's a real conversation starter. I feel like it's pretty, if there's ever a lull in conversation, it's like, there's so much discussion at a sex party. You can just be like, what brought you here?
Yeah.
What are you into?
Yeah, or how did you get into that thing that I just watched?
Yeah.
Because that's crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you both
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You're
Yes.
great. And we'll drop all of your information in the what's that section called? Not the is it
show
the
notes.
caption?
The
show notes,
description.
caption?
Yeah.
We'll put Emily's OnlyFans.
Thank you.
You can find Iffy on Dropout,
Yes.
hosting actually, but also on all kinds of
Yes,
different
or
videos.
anything
and-
else either of you want to promote?
Yeah, just I guess our podcast, Our Relationship Pod, which y'all will be on soon enough.
Hell yeah.
We go through the relationship advice subreddit, read them,
love it.
and then discuss them.
Sometimes jokey, sometimes very intense advice.
But yeah, it's fun because it ranges from friendships to family stuff to actual romantic relationship stuff, and it's always a good time. Yeah.
Amazing.
Beautiful. Well, we'll put the link to that in the show notes, description,
Show
caption,
notes, I don't even-
as
Yeah.
well.
I call them show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll all be down there so you can find it there. And once again, great episode. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts, please remember to rate and review us. And if you're on YouTube, hello, thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe.
Like, subscribe, comment, join our Patreon.
Yeah, if you're on Spotify, also go If D's. I got some rap songs.
Okay.
If this
go
was the
save
one
me.
thing
Yeah,
I
yeah.
asked you not to do,
got
was to
some rap
promote your
songs.
music.
Got some rap songs on there. I need you to go ahead. I need you to save me. I'm gonna do some stuff.
You just save me.
I need you to
'cause
save me.
Yeah, you can save me. You
Please
can follow me on
save me.
Spotify.
All right. Have a good rest of your Monday.
Bye.